Work hard, very important. But don't stop living. For those who are at the top, think beyond yourself. Just by ensuring that you are safe and protected, don't quash people under you. Grow more people. And when you grow more people, your reputation will grow. And when your reputation grows, everything else will follow. So be a lot more large-hearted. Be willing to be vulnerable. Give more visibility to your teams. Bet more aggressively on younger talent.
Hello everyone. My name is Srikanth. I'm the host of the show Inspire Someone Today. This podcast brings in personalities from a cross-section of our society who will share their perspectives, learnings, hacks and experiences that can inspire all of us in our journeys. Come, join me on this ride. My guest for today is an industry powerhouse, a man with diverse experiences and alumni from St. Stephen's College and XLRI Jamshedpur. During his stint as CHRO with the organizations he was part of, they were enlisted as the top 10 best companies to work for in India. Currently on an entrepreneurial journey, his firm continues to make an impact with global organizations, the Prabir People Advisory. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Prabir Jha. On this show, Prabir shares his experience as CHRO and leading influencer. How to know yourself better, things about building new age careers, comfort around ambiguity and resilience, eloquently articulating the obsession between leader and leadership. What does vulnerability in leadership mean? An experience that made Prabir believe in the potential of this great country, and one hack around positive psychology. Excited to launch my podcast, Inspire Someone Today. Have heard about Dream Debut and I'm fortunate to experience one for myself. On this auspicious day of the Indian independence, I am not only launching this podcast, but also privileged to have Mr. Prabir Jha as my first guest on the show. Pradeep, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Srikanth. A pleasure to be joining you on this and happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day too. Prabir, you're one of those rare breed of professionals having an experience across 3 different genres: civil services, the corporate world, and now an entrepreneur yourself. And across industries from engineering to IT to hydrocarbons to retail. Walk us through this amazing journey that you have had.
Srikanth, I don't know whether it's amazing or it's checkered, but with hindsight, I think it's been a rich experience, and some of it happened by accident, and maybe here and there by design. And so I grew up as a Patna boy, and like anyone who knows Bihar knows that if you're a bright youngster, you need a set of initials behind your name. So UPSC is almost a default aspiration. As in Hyderabad, everyone wants to go to the US, so it is like that for someone in Patna. So joining the civil service was a very logical choice. And I went to St. Stephen's, Delhi, predictably did history, wrote the IAS exams. I was still in my master's, finishing my master's when I cleared the UPSC, and that's how my tryst with the civil service started. Very interestingly, after almost a decade, I left the government when I had never aspired, I had never known the world beyond the civil service, because I also come from a family of bureaucrats and civil servants. So that's the only world I knew. And I had, of course, gone to XLRI Jamshedpur. And I left, ironically, for a very poor HR handling of my reimbursement claims of my XLRI education. So it's ironical, but bad HR and, and I won't get into the story, but I felt that I was being taken for granted. And I quit the civil service and joined the corporate world. And Thermax was my first corporate job. And then it was Tech Mahindra, then many years with Dr. Reddy's, then Tata Motors, then all of Reliance, and then Cipla. And a year back, I said, let me experiment with doing things entrepreneurial. So So it's kind of been, a life of meandering, of experimentation, of taking my bets, and living what I call, Shrikant, a life of convictions, not consequences. I've not stuck on or hung on because my gratuity is due, or I have so many stock options which I will be leaving on the table, or I have a life assured post retirement like in the government. So I have never played safe. I have just followed my heart, and I followed my principles. And so far, so good. Let's see what and where life will take me from here on.
Excellent. I think very relevant with your varied experience. One of the questions that plagues a lot of the youngsters is how can one plan for a long career?
I personally believe that we are actually framing the question wrong. And that is why many people go through phases of stress, of disappointment. A career is an outcome. You don't really plan for a career, it's an outcome. In today's world, which is so choppy as we see today, with so many black swan events, and also a world of such great possibilities and opportunities. So I don't think that careers today needs or should be planned basis just your education or your prior experience. Unfortunately, both recruiters, HR guys, CEOs, line managers, and individuals still continue to play the old world paradigm. And I think in that process, they are missing huge opportunities of building a career, which is basically what? It's a mosaic of experiences, right? Only when you build that mosaic of experiences, new learnings, you push yourself out of your comfort zone, you continue to keep yourself relevant and impactful, right? Otherwise, you can do what used to be the earlier generation thinking, where the world was more status quo, the world was more stable, and people could have finished from college and said, the next 35 years, this is what I'm going to do. I don't think that is guaranteed, nor is it ideal. So with hindsight and the way you started this conversation, my career is a very checkered career or a very rich career, depending on the way you want to look at it. But otherwise, it would have been a very linear, very flat, boring set of jobs where you would have got some increments, you would have got some change of titles. But I don't think careers are about that. Careers is really therefore about building a set of experiences that are very varied, a set of situations where you learn in big jumps and starts, very disruptive. And I think in that process, when you look back, your career would have got shaped. So my belief, and I do a lot of things around career design, and I run many workshops. I coach a lot of people in this area. And your question is very typical of what I hear from most people, because they are wanting to look at what I call a pediatric problem with a geriatric mindset, right? Looking at a new age problem with an old world mindset. And that's why careers go through these, oh, I'm unemployed, oh, get me a job. Why would you need to get a job? Why would you need to do exactly what you've done for 10 years? So that's how I personally would recommend people to look at careers. Stop, pause, reflect, take your bet. Some will not go right, course correct. And in that process, your career, which is very unique to you, will get created and get born.
Wonderful. You did touch upon creating your own career experiences. Are there some ingredients around it? What are some of the things that one can look for so that they can start building those career experiences that they would want to have?
Great question, Shrikant. It's a great question. First thing that I think people should do is to know themselves better. Unfortunately, we build careers because someone told us to do science in our plus two, someone told us to do engineering or medicine, after that, and therefore we did this. I mean, hardly, in our socialization, or hardly organizations spend the time, managers spend the time to help you understand yourself. So you have also never paused and asked yourself the question, what are my deeply embedded life interests? What am I great at? Where do I get my mojo? So the biggest parameter to look at is not what the world thinks you should do, but what you believe you enjoy most, you are great at, right? Build a career on the basis of your passion and your strengths. You cannot build a career on things which are not your passion, even if you're good at them, or if you have a passion but you don't have the requisite skills for it. So that's the first one. The second is, I think, learnability. You must have very high learning agility. And therefore, change of industry, change of functions, change of geographies, change of lines altogether, very important because it keeps you all the time alert. And therefore, you're learning all the time. And through learning and new experiences comes a very important ingredient of career shape. Third is the comfort with ambiguity and resilience. I believe the new age careers are not going to be an end of the tunnel reality. Most career opportunities are going to be on the fringes. And if we get more comfortable with accepting that reality, we'll look at emergent possibilities, emergent career options that are getting created. So comfort with ambiguity and therefore taking those risks and the resilience to go through that life, through that rough and tumble. People want to believe from day one, I will be, cruising on an expressway. Careers are not going to be like that. Do what you make. Careers will have their little moments of down. There will be potholes somewhere along the way, right? Sometimes you may need to change from flying an aircraft to going in a train to getting onto, a truck or a car or whatever else, or getting onto a steamer. So it is that ability to flex, it's that willingness to experiment, to learn, and to follow your passion and heart that I believe new age careers will find absolutely essential ingredients for being shaped. Rest was all of the past. I don't think much of that will holds true today and will hold true in the days to come.
Great, excellent. I think in the same context, Prabir, what are the things that you went through in your own glorious career that you have had? What are some of the challenges that comes to your mind, and how did you kind of overcome that?
I will be honest. The first challenge was to confront my own mindset. I told you I came from a background where if you're a bright guy, you became a career civil servant and you retired as one, right? And that was aspiration. So to even want to go and study and do a full 2-year MBA program was a big decision, right? I don't know of many people who would have done it or who did it. And even today in the corporate world, people don't want to do it. Just to take a break after almost a decade or so, you go to a business school, study with classmates who are almost a generation younger because government adds many more years to your persona, right? And then I came back. I never thought I'll leave the civil service, but I did 6 months after I came back. And with 15,000 rupees in our common account, my wife's and mine. That was a big risk, and 2 small children in our arms. It was a big risk to take. So that was another big challenge because and God has been very benevolent. People have been very, very generous in their support for me. But what if it had bombed? Imagine we gave up one of the most privileged jobs in India, being a top civil servant, to take this chance. So that was the other big challenge that I faced. Third big challenge was initial mindsets. People would say, but Prabir, you don't talk like a bureaucrat. You don't look like a bureaucrat. So mindsets, because you come from a certain world, you will behave in a certain way. Of course, it was proved untrue, but the start position was you had to work that much extra hard to make sure no one ever has a reason to find faults with you, right? So we worked very, very hard. And I remember that there is no shortcut to success. It's pain, and there's a price to pay. Sometimes I think it was not worth paying, but I worked very hard. The fourth challenge that one gets to is you start in a world where you know no one. I knew not a single soul in the corporate sector. I had no godfathers in a manner of speaking. So, everywhere it was through partly your own hard work. And second, what I believe has been not a challenge for me, but I think can be a challenge is how do you build your reputation as a leader? And I think I would really pride myself in being an outstanding leader. That is one little brag point I will have. The ability to spot talent, the ability to take bets with people, the ability to have the courage to question things ahead of their times, and the luck to be able to pull it off, right? Because you also need your share of luck and good fortune. So I think there have been moments of challenge, and especially when you change industries, which is what I have done almost all my career. And every company and every industry believes it's unique. And I can assure people, no company is unique. Because I have gone across the entire spectrum and everyone believes they are unique, at least from an organizational nuance perspective, people perspective. It is your willingness to ask dumb questions. And sometimes you can look very stupid, but it is good to be stupid. You're sitting on the management team and you're asking questions which everyone else who has been in that industry or company for a long time wonders why is he asking. But asking stupid questions to me was a great sense of strength, because only when you ask stupid questions do you ask the more fundamental questions, right? So these have been challenges of working with people. And of course, the last challenge is, if you do well, you'll have your share of critics and your share of jealousy to deal with, right? So I can't deny that reality. I mean, unwittingly, some people start feeling jealous. Some people, start to pull you down. All those games happen. And the important thing is stay focused, keep your conscience clear. I've slept very well all my life, right? So do an honest job and don't bother about what people will say, because from my civil service days till now, I've realized everywhere I've only challenged status quo. And when you challenge status quo, people talk about wanting status quo to be disturbed, but no one wants status quo to be disturbed, because that's where their power bases lie, their comforts lie. But I've done it, and you have your share of critics, and you take it in your stride. So these have been different strands of challenges at different moments that one did experience as one built one's career.
Very nice. And you're definitely not bragging when you said you have been an exceptional leader. What I have seen and read about you, people have worked with you like 15 years back, 20 years back. They still remember those nuggets of experience, nuggets of coming in across you and say that what wonderful a leader, what wonderful a person you have been. And drawing on that, I think what intrigued me very much was also your own personal goal, which basically stated that to support each person in his or her journey to become a better professional and, more importantly, a more complete person. I think that's very, very profound, Prabir. Again, if you can just dwell a little more about it and what you kind of want to pass on as a message.
So obviously, you've looked my LinkedIn profile, Shrikant. So I wrote that, and like most of my writings, they're very spontaneous. I never revise what I write. It comes from the heart or the mind, but I never edit and revise and revise. I mean, whatever you read is. So this was written as spontaneously whenever my LinkedIn account was opened. I forget now, 15 years, 20 years back, whenever it was. So I've not needed to change this also, because, see, there are two important dimensions. One is the so-called dimension that the world looks at, the professional, the success, right? And but that journey is a painful journey. You go through several moments of truth. You go through several moments of self-doubt. You go through several phases of jealous peers. You go through several people who just wonder why you're getting what you're getting, and so on and so forth. And therefore, it is very important to stay very anchored. And while you may get all your titles and money and rewards and awards, are you really growing as a complete person? And for me, the two cannot be divorced. And unfortunately, we find many successful careerists, well-placed guys who'll never retire, who'll never vacate space. They'll hang on, they'll edge everyone out. So very successful people. But they aren't necessarily people who've grown themselves or grown people around them. And I think for me, that is a very important part of true development. And my effort has been not only to help people or coach them to be better leaders, be more successful managers, but also help them get to be better people, get to be more charitable human beings, get to be more vulnerable people. And this is not typical that you see. The world actually sees a very macho image of a leader, and everyone wants to be seen like one sitting on the high horse. But I can tell you that it's very lonely at the top. It's very lonely. And the world respects titles and success because that's what they see. But what they don't see are their challenges, are their own struggles, their struggles with relationships. And I believe that whether as a CHRO or whether your emotions cannot be left hung on the peg outside your corporate office. You carry those emotions. They impact your happiness. And at the end of the day, success is only one small dimension of happiness. And therefore, in a lot of my coaching that I do now as a vocation, I try and blend this, because then only do you actually have a symbiotic relationship. Success and feeding into happiness, and happiness contributing to greater success.
Again, Prabir, your journey that you have had so far, are there incident stories that had a profound impact on you, on who you are as a person or who you are as a leader?
There are many stories. I observe a lot of people and I reflect a lot. So there are many nuggets of experiences, either that one got directly or one saw, and you realize this is not the way I would behave with people. This is not the way. So, and there are certain times when, and these experiences come from all kinds of characters. Like, I'll give you a small example. I had just left the government and started with Thermax, and we were at the College of Engineering in Pune doing our campus hire of graduate engineers, right? And I met this guy who was very good, who was speaking very confidently, speaking very well, answered all his functional questions right. And I don't know, on his resume or his form, there must have been something which showed to me many breaks in schools. So I was curious, and I asked the guy that why are there so many breaks in your education, right? And he said, sir, my father is in a transferable job or was moving cities. So I said, is he in a transferable job, right? He says, yeah, he was moving around, and I don't know what happened. So I asked, so what does he do? Is he with the government or a bank or, a company? And Shrikant, he said, sir, he's a gardener today in a housing society in Pune. The guy had a brilliant record, College of Engineering, Pune. I don't know where he is. I've forgotten his name. I mean, I was so humbled. What contexts people come through to get to where they are. I was very fortunate. God has been very benevolent, right? So I came back and remember telling my wife that this country has a future, because this is how brilliance actually is able to still come to the top. So I've had many such experiences of listening to stories, and I listen to stories and I also share many stories. And every story has something inspiring. I mean, I remember when I started off as a young 22, 23-year-old guy in the civil service, you start almost at the top. I've never been an individual contributor in my life, but for my last entrepreneurial 1 year. And these are people who are 30 years older to you. And when you talk to them, when you see them in action, and people may think the government does not work, I had a very different experience with my staff. They were the ones who were actually holding the ends up. We were the young brats, we were the new sahabs, but they were the ones who were actually helping us. And there's so much to learn seeing their humility. And at the end of the day, you can't promote them, you can't give them a better increment, right? But why and how does that guy do his or her job, which ensures that the systems work? So, every experience, Shrikant, and I can go on and on, has been a moment of learning something. And if I am what I am today, it's because I think I have tried to learn from different people. The other day, I put out a post on LinkedIn on learning from union leaders. Now, we think that as management, they are our adversaries. I have had a very different experience. And again, God has been kind. I have never had Prabir Jha Murdabad in my career yet. Not once. And I've had my share of conversations with union leaders, but I believe you learn respect, mutual respect. You learn the ability to influence from some of these union leaders. So my episodes will vary, but I have learned from almost anyone and everyone. I have learned seeing some of leaders and managers who have been very toxic in their tones. By seeing them, I've said, don't learn this from them. I've never raised my voice. I've never needed to shout, because when you see that and you know what it is doing people across the table and you're still junior. So I think it's been an amalgam of all these observations and experiences that somewhere has also left its imprint on me. And I have many of my weaknesses, I'm sure. So, so I have my share.
I think we can go all day long to hear some of these beautiful stories. Thanks for sharing that. Very powerful. So, Prabir, one other piece that I kind of came across as I was profiling your profile was a very interesting comment that you had made, was to look to compliment at least one person every day. While it looks simple and yet very profound, what was the idea behind that?
No, so it was, the IP is not mine. Actually, this was one of my bosses in the civil service days. I was walking out of his office one afternoon, and as I was near his door, and he had a big office, he says, Prabir, and I said, yes, sir, can you come back? I went back, and he said, no, sit down. I said, okay. He said, I want to tell you something. Now, when the boss says, I want to tell you something, you naturally get pangs in your stomach. What is he going to tell you? So he told me that, Prabir, I have been observing you, and I find that every day you compliment at least one person. Now, I was not conscious, and which is also to the point that not every feedback is negative, right? But very few managers actually pick the moment and give feedback. And I learned from this also. So I became aware, okay, I was not conscious. But then as I started, he gave me some examples and I started reflecting. I realized, yes, it is true that, and by temperament, I'm more an optimist, I'm more a positivist, I'm a very self assured person. So I don't need to kind of, like some people say, you don't look vulnerable. Why do you look so vulnerable? And I'm saying, because at the end of the day, I'm not perfect. So this line came from that episode, and then I consciously started practicing it. So what was unconscious to me, and maybe I was doing it, given this feedback, and I'm very grateful to Mr. Guruparan for having told me what he did. And I realized that this is positive psychology at work. I had not gone to Accelerate and done an MBA course in HR till that time. But I realized that at the end of the day, and remember, this was the government. I mean, I cannot promote a person, I cannot recognize the person, I cannot give him a bonus. I have no such powers. But what I can do is to make people feel good about themselves. And when you get them to believe that the manager believes in me, values me, right? The guy voluntarily offers his discretionary effort. So the more I consciously did, the more I realized the gains, and therefore then it became part of my psyche. So that is how the stories. I wrote a post hoping that at least some people will start practicing it, because I've seen too many managers, too many leaders, very senior leaders in my career who are very poor at it. They are nasty, they are toxic, they are critical, and it does no benefit to anyone. But it's just that they have the title and power and they can get away with it because the culture looks the other way. I think it's much better to practice a more positive psychology anchored leadership because you get far more. And it doesn't take away your right to pull up a person, but there's a way in which you can even pull up a person. You don't have to kind of take his pants down in a full beating, which I find many, many leaders do even today.
Beautiful. And there's also a message in that is you don't have to have everything at your disposal to kind of take care of somebody. Even within your own limitations, you can make a difference.
Correct. I mean, I ask people, when was the last time you complimented your mate or you thanked your driver? You don't need your boss's approval for that. Isn't it natural just to say thank you? I like the way you do this for me. I like the fact that you come on time every day. Imagine someone's day is also starting. And when he or she goes back home, the person goes with warmth and therefore wants to come back to work rather than, the minute the person starts, you start shouting and howling. And I feel very strongly, and that is part of my agony aunt persona or the wholesomeness persona. But I feel there's a crisis of leadership. We are obsessed with leaders when we should be obsessed about leadership. And I think companies still don't get this. And that is why I think we are living in a world of what Sumanta Ghoshal would call satisfactory underperformance.
Satisfactory underperformance. So, Prabir, there is a cross section of people listening to your talk. Both budding leaders, want to be leaders, and leaders who have been at the helm for many, many years. What would be your 2 cents of wisdom for this group? And what would be your inspire someone today message to them?
Now, my message, I don't know whether I'm even qualified, but at least from where I sit and reflect, for those who are at the top, think beyond yourself. Just by ensuring that you are safe and protected, don't quash people under you. Grow more people. And when you grow more people, your reputation will grow. And when your reputation grows, everything else will follow. So be a lot more large-hearted. Be willing to be vulnerable. Give more visibility to your teams. Bet more aggressively on younger talent. That's what I would tell them, because now you're playing for your legacy. You're not just playing to a few rupees more. It's easier said than done, but very clearly, I think this is what differentiates people who will be folklores and some people who would have made their money but are not likely to be. So it's a choice that you make. So that's the one that I for the senior leader. For the younger leaders, I think the important thing is be hungry. Be hungry and be vulnerable to feedback. Seek feedback. Many managers don't give feedback, but I ask a lot of younger people, have you sought feedback? Have you sought feedback from your friends? Have you sought feedback from your spouse? Forget the manager. But have you even asked your manager once? He or she may not be giving feedback. So the question is, when it becomes habit early in your life to accept feedback, and therefore in the process you become more vulnerable, and you don't say, I was a topper at my engineering college or at my business school, it's not going to help you, right? When you get feedback, you'll start processing the feedback without being defensive. And that is why I use the word vulnerable. I think you will prepare yourself better for the days ahead, because the days ahead are going to be gray. They are not going to be black and white. Don't look for black and white answers. Learn to be resilient. Learn to prepare yourself. I mean, the other day, I was in some conversation on one of the social media platforms. This was about, I can't choose my manager. Someone asked me. I said, of course you can. If you can't choose your manager, it is your helplessness, because you've never built yourself to be able to walk out on your manager. The manager should be worrying about whether you will leave him or not. You should not be needing to worry about, what will I do if the manager throws me out? And that is very important, constant learning, constant feedback, seeing yourself in the mirror and asking yourself some very difficult questions, right? You may have spent 5 years in a job, but have you learned any new skills, or are you doing the same job? Your increment may have happened. So that is a trap, and that they must not do. So that's what I would tell the younger people. And I'll also add one more line: work hard, very important, but don't stop living. If I were to look back at my life and career, that's one thing I sometimes feel that, I don't remember, of course, being in HR, I never could plan annual vacations when annual revisions and performance cycles happen. But maybe with hindsight, when I tell myself, I would have lived life more completely. And that is why every company I've gone, I've changed the leave norms, where I've said, stop hoarding leave. Leave is meant to be taken, right? Because I don't think I was great at planning my leave and balancing.
If somebody were to write a book on Prabir Jha, what would you name the book as?
I would maybe write The Man Who Dared and Cared. That's what I would possibly suggest, or dare and care. I think because I do believe I have been quite dabang. I have thought ahead of times. I have been a challenger. You can't rein me down. I always say, if you're looking for a quote poet, don't hire me. I'll never be a chamcha. But I have been able to, and that's the way I was. At the same time, care. So the reputation one built also was that, if there's no one who is there to listen to the company, Prabir will definitely. So there was a time in my life I never had a lunch break because someone or the other wanted to see me, and that's the agony aunt instinct in me. That even if you can't solve, you can at least empathetically listen, and you're paid to do that job as well. So dare and care.
Prabir, what a wonderful way to title the book, and the way to end this very first show of Inspire Someone Today. The Man Who Cared and Dared. Prabir Jha, thank you so much for taking time and sharing those wonderful nuggets with me today. Appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Shrikant, for having me on your show. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what to listen, feel free to share them, and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Shrikant, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.